welcome to CrunchWeek, the weekly show where we talk about some of the biggest stories over the past week. I'm Colleen Taylor, and I'm joined by Chris Velasco and Ryan Lawler. We're obviously at CES right now, so this is a special edition of CrunchWeek, a special Vegas edition. So obviously the big story this week is everything CES, everything consumer electronics. But there have been a couple other stories that have kind of pushed through all that noise despite CES's dominance, right?
Oh, sure. Apple, even though Apple isn't at CES, they have this habit of sort of stealing the show, even though they're not here. So the big news from earlier this week was that there was a report by the Wall Street Journal claiming that Apple will be working on a cheaper iPhone. Now, this isn't really anything new. These rumors pop up every year or so, if not more often. But it's very timely considering all of these companies are making their huge announcements right now. Personally, I think it's BS. I mean, Apple doesn't need to be the company that goes after the low end. They've focused on entry-level stuff in the past with the iMacs, and that's all well and good. But for the iPhone, it's the sort of product that they've said themselves they never really want to compromise on.
Right.
So I'm not convinced that that's necessarily the route they're going, and I think it's a little maybe irresponsible to kind of go with these blind sources and report it.
Right.
Well, the cheaper iPhone is always last year's model.
Oh,
right?
sure,
and it doesn't make sense. Like, why would they change from that strategy?
Well, I guess the important thing to consider is that these cheaper iPhones, the free iPhones in particular, they're mostly just bound to the U.S. So if you walk into an AT&T store or a Verizon store, you can get like an iPhone 4 for free with a contract.
Right.
But that doesn't really do you much good when you're in a developing market like South America or China. So an iPhone 4 would cost you like $400.
Okay.
So in those markets, it could be a good move for Apple to kind of push out lower hardware, but it's the sort of thing where they would have to make compromises in design and quality, and that's not the kind of thing that they've said they're willing to do.
Well,
Right.
there's always that question of how quickly Android is growing because of those reasons, and because it's used on lower end phones that are sold like sometimes in developing markets, but they're not necessarily like full feature Android phones as we would think of them, right?
I mean, the experience for an Android phone, let's say in China, for example, can really, really, really differ. You've got different companies pushing out different interfaces for their devices. Different companies are pushing out different apps in different app stores. So the ecosystem is very, very different than what we're seeing here in the States. Android in particular is interesting because, I mean, it's free for OEMs to throw on devices, but it leads to a very, very, I guess you could say, fragmented user experience for all of these people. And Apple doesn't want that fragmentation.
People want their iPhones, whether they're $99 or $400. So obviously, we could be talking about this for the next 15 minutes and beyond. That's why this was the kind of story that just broke through. And despite all of this big stuff at CES, Apple, ends up being a top story no matter what happens every single time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, another thing that happened this week while we're all here in Vegas, a lot of us reporters got an email in our inbox from Facebook, an invitation to a big event happening next week at Facebook's headquarters back in Silicon Valley.
So the big event this week is what's happening next week.
CrunchWeek,
That's our big story.
Just so excited. We're all so excited to go down and talk to Zuck. But yeah, it's one of these things where you get the invite in your inbox and you feel really special. And then you look at Twitter and you look at other things and you realize every other tech reporter got this invite too. So this is going to be a huge event. There are a bunch of rumors. We're all hearing different things. Might have something to do with mobile. Could have something to do with automotives. Could have something to do with a new headquarters, a new office.
Search.
Yeah. What we know is it's going to be a big event.
Waiting for my Facebook car.
Your Facebook.
Yeah.
Let's hold out for the Facebook phone first.
Facebook's going to roll out its car.
Your self-driving Facebook car. Or maybe the car would be driven by your friends.
Yeah.
Get it? The social. That would be dangerous. But so we're all going to do that next week. So yes, that was another big company, Facebook, Apple, they steal the show from.
We'll have a ton of people there, so we'll have a lot of coverage from that event.
We will be on the scene.
We will be on it. But yeah, let's talk about CES. I mean, for me, I feel like the big news out of CES is that there's no big news from CES. I mean, maybe it's just because we're jaded and we're used to seeing all this stuff, but it seems like everything that I saw was it's pretty iterative. I don't know. You went to more of the keynotes, so
that's Very interesting stuff, as you guys may have heard. A lot of mobile chipset announcements, which maybe not the most thrilling thing in the world, but there they are.
But that's the stuff that really powers these gadgets.
Sure.
The end product that we get so excited about. I mean, it's the new chip technology.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I got all hot and bothered when I saw that Snapdragon 800. But that's maybe not everyone watching CrunchWeek right now.
But some of them were kind of awkward too, right? I mean, you get these big keynotes of these companies that are chip companies. They're not Apple, they're not Facebook, they're not used to being super hip all the time. So
Qualcomm's making a big push, or they're trying to anyway. The keynote, we had a post up on this earlier in the week, but it was really bizarre. It started out with 3 really obnoxious people, touting how they were born mobile and how these new chipsets are sort of great for their lifestyles, and it's just absolute facepalm material. Then Big Bird shows up with a guy in a Big Bird getup. So there's 2 of them talking about like augmented reality apps, which I guess is fine. But
why the Big Bird thing? Is that like it's kind of like a little tired meme? Maybe when they were writing the script, it was after the presidential debates and the Mitt Romney Big Bird thing. Is that what it was? Like,
no, it was the actual Big Bird. Like it was a Sesame Street augmented reality app designed sort of teach kids how to read.
Okay.
It was unironic.
It was unironic. We all drew the Romney connection anyway, but it was meant to be completely straightforward. And then Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, best known as one of South Africa's most strident anti-apartheid people, popped in via recorded video to wish us all, among other things, having a happy CES, which I thought was great. Thank you very much. I don't know why he was there, but there it was.
And while we're talking about chips, I mean, this is the year that Intel is going to be mobile again. Every year, it seems like Intel has a new mobile chipset. They're going to take down ARM at some point. So at some point, it'll actually happen, but it hasn't to date. So I don't know about that. I thought the really interesting thing is, how much. TechCrunch, we're all about startups, but how many startups were here? How many crowd-funded projects we're seeing? It's no longer just a place where the big guys, Microsoft and Samsung and all those guys show off products, but we've seen a lot of cool stuff from independent or small tiny startup device makers. Making
and the
their own hardware.
crowdfunding is a big part of that. We talked to John Biggs, sat up here with IndieGoGo founder Slava Rubin, and talked about how many IndieGoGo funded projects are here at CES. Same thing, obviously Kickstarter is huge. The Pebble smartwatch. I'd say if there was one big startup story this week, it was probably the announcement from Pebble that they're finally going to start shipping
they have a
these
ship
things
date.
Can't wait.
that everyone's been waiting for. So the startups really have kind of stolen the show. You were at Eureka Park, right?
Yes, we were. It was.
What's Eureka Park?
Eureka Park is basically it's 3 or 4 big ballrooms in the Venetian. So it's a bit of a hike, but myself and Ryan and Joe Etherington trekked over the other day, and really a lot of cool companies. Probably one of my favorites was a relatively new company called Sensory Acumen. And what it is they make what's called the Game Skunk. And it's probably the least appealing name in consumer electronics, but there it is. Basically what it is, it's a small box that plugs into a PC, and it generates smells that go with the video or the games that you're playing. So, it's cool. It's all about sort of enhancing the experience of playing these video games, but what I really thought was great about it was there's this sort of therapeutic angle to it. They're trying to help people with post-traumatic stress disorder kind of get over these, cope with these sensory triggers by showing you these videos and giving you these smells and trying to recreate it so you're better able to handle that. So I thought that was amazing.
So we actually will get smell-o-vision at some point?
Sure. The Game Skunk didn't quite work while we were filming it, but a little later on they fired up this video of a Humvee rolling through a war zone, and you could smell like the gasoline and stuff. So
wow.
It was a little off-putting, but also very, very cool.
Yeah, a lot of these health kind of things. So that's more mental health, I suppose.
Sure.
But there are a lot. Quantified Self is just as big as ever, and there was an entire health section here that did you guys go through during the live?
Yeah. We went through.
So that's
that was day 2. That was. That's in the South Hall, lower level.
Day 2 seems like a million years ago.
I know. But yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it's interesting. The one thing I will say about the Quantified Self thing is, though, there are all these products that are really cool, and they kind of do around the same thing, but they don't work together. You know, there's like no, you know, when you talk about a fragmented market, I mean, more than anything else, you know, it's like you've got the Nike Fuel Band, and
Right.
you've got all these all these like step counters, and then we stopped by the what's the scale, the connected scale, the
Withings?
Right.
Withings? However you pronounce it. But
However
yeah.
you pronounce it, I think it's We Things. But so we stopped by there, and Daryl actually really liked their connected step counter thing, whatever, activity monitor with Bluetooth and all that stuff. So, but what I'd really love is for, you know, some sort of standard, you know, that all of these devices can work on together, because it just doesn't make sense, right?
All these devices want their software to be the standard. That's what every single one of them will tell you.
Sure.
They acknowledge that there's fragmentation, but they think that their software platform is the
We'll
best,
be the
and that
one.
everyone else.
Oh, hey. Just,
It's a perfect end to the week. So we're all. It's all right. So we're all a little partied out. It's been a big week for parties here in Vegas. It's like the party town, right? Had a good time, everybody.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal.
So we're all ready to go back to our regular lives at some point, I think.
It should be good. Yeah.
It should be good. So I think that's a wrap for this week's Crunch Week. Thanks a lot for watching, and check back next week. We'll be back in San Francisco, back in the studio. But thanks for watching. Bye from Vegas.